You're 16, pulling staples out of a downed fence line in August heat that sits at 103 degrees by 10 in the morning. The rancher pays you $12 an hour in cash and doesn't learn your name for 3 weeks. 42 years later, you're sitting across from a land broker in a wool sport coat as he slides a purchase offer across the table. The assets: 2,400 acres and a herd of 380 head of registered Angus. The number: $4.1 million. The reality check: the average U.S. cattle operation nets its owner less than $50,000 a year. The average acre of ranch land in the Mountain West sold for $1,260 in 2024. The people who make it aren't the ones who loved the idea of ranching. They're the ones who stayed when the idea ran out. This is every level of building a cattle operation in America and what it actually costs to climb. If you like breakdowns of how careers progress, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Level 1: the ranch hand. Age: 16. Pay: $12 per hour, cash plus room and board. The job found you because your uncle knows a guy who runs 600 cow-calf pairs on a spread outside of Miles City, Montana. He needed a body that could show up before dawn and didn't ask questions. You show up. You don't ask questions. 5:30, your day starts. You feed before the sun is fully up. Hay goes to the feeding grounds by tractor. Protein cubes go by pickup. Water tanks are checked and de-iced if it's winter. For the summer grind, you pull fence, T-posts, wire, staples, stretcher bars. A mile of 4-strand barbed wire takes a 2-man crew most of a day. You are the second man. The rancher is the first. He doesn't explain things twice. You learn by watching and by doing it wrong once. Your bunkhouse has a wood stove, a mini fridge, and a television that gets 3 channels. You don't watch much television. You're asleep by 9. The full contact reality. Branding season comes in May. You learn to work the ground crew. Flanking calves, holding them down while the iron goes on, the vaccine goes in, and the ear tag goes through. A 300-pound calf on a warm morning is a full contact job. You get kicked in the thigh hard enough to bruise down to the knee. The rancher sees it happen and says, "That one's quick." That's all he says. You get up and grab the next calf. Safety data. The BLS fatality rate for agricultural workers is 20.4 per 100,000. For livestock operations specifically, it runs higher. Crushing injuries, kicks, equipment rollovers. NIOSH data shows tractor overturns account for 44% of farm fatalities nationwide. The rancher you work for lost a hand in a PTO shaft in 1987. He never mentions it. You notice the glove on the prosthetic the second week and never say a word. By fall, you've worked cattle at every hour of the day and night. You've pulled a calf in a January snowstorm at 2 in the morning with your bare hands because the gloves were too thick to feel the positioning. The calf lived. The cow stood up 20 minutes later like nothing happened. You went back to the bunkhouse and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. You were not sad. You were not happy. You felt something settle in you that had been loose your whole life. You go back the next summer. And the summer after that. Level 2, the cowhand. Age: 21. Pay: $180 per day, $22.50 per hour equivalent. You've moved between 3 operations in 2 states, Wyoming, Nebraska, then back to Montana. The day rate is better, but the days are never just 8 hours. You've learned to ride competently, not perform, ride. There's a difference ranchers can see from 50 yards away. You can sort cattle through a gate, work a cutting horse, and read the body language of a herd moving wrong. You vaccinate, pregnancy check alongside the vet, wean calves on schedule, and run your first small gather. Pushing cattle off summer pasture down through timber to the valley floor before the first hard frost. The feedlot detour. The feedlot outside of Greeley, Colorado offers you a job at $19 an hour with benefits. 110,000 head on feed. You take it for 1 winter to understand the corporate, logistical side of the business. The job. The pens hold 150 to 200 head each. You walk them twice a day looking for sick animals. The metric. A bovine respiratory disease, BRD pull rate of 15% or higher on a pen means somebody missed something on arrival. You learn what a sick steer looks like before it looks sick. Ears slightly low, steps slightly off, 1 beat behind the rest of the pen. You pull it, tag it, move it to the hospital pen and call the vet tech. Some pull through, some don't. The ones that don't cost the operation $1,400 to $1,800 per head. You leave the feedlot in spring. The money was steady, But the work was not the work you wanted. You go back to cow-calf country, hiring on with an operation running 900 pairs in the Powder River Basin. The foreman, Garrett, has been working cattle since he was 9. He puts you on the horses that need riding and the jobs that need doing, then leaves you alone. That's how you know you've moved up. Nobody watches you anymore. Level 3, the foreman. Age, 29, pay, $52,000 per year plus housing and truck. The offer comes from a ranch in the Judith Basin running 700 mother cows across 12,000 acres of deeded and leased ground. The owner is 71 and flies in from Billings 4 times a year. The ranch runs itself. He tells you at the interview. You know what that means. It means you run it. A management. You manage 2 full-time hands and seasonal help during branding and weaning. The operations. You set the breeding program, manage grazing rotation across 8 pastures, coordinate with the brand inspector, and track every animal by ear tag number in a spreadsheet you built yourself. Playing the market. In year 2, the cattle market swings hard. Fed cattle top out at $197 per hundredweight in the spring, then drop to $171 by fall. Your calf crop is 680 head, averaging 575 pounds at weaning. That market shift erases $80,000 in projected revenue in 6 months. You call the owner and walk him through the numbers. You tell him what you're selling, when, and why. He listens and says, "Your call." You sell the heavy end in September and hold the light calves through winter on wheat pasture. The gamble costs $14,000 in grazing fees but returns $31,000 in added value by March. The owner sends a bonus check for $8,000. It's the first time money has felt like proof. You start reading land prices. Not because you can afford it, but because you need to know what you're working toward. Level 4, the lease operator. Age, 36, net income, $38, 400/year. A neighbor to the ranch you manage is retiring. He owns 640 acres of deeded ground and grazing rights on another 1,800 acres of state lease. He doesn't want to sell yet, but he'll lease the whole operation for $38,000 a year, cattle not included. You run the numbers for 6 weeks. You borrow 120 head of bred heifers from a banker in Lewistown via a retained ownership deal. He holds the paper on the cattle, and you pay him back from calf sales over 3 years. You give notice at your foreman job. The owner shakes your hand and says it took you long enough. You move in. The heifers calve in April. You lose 7 calves. You expected to lose 4. The math is already wrong. The macro data. USDA Economic Research Service data shows that in any given year, 70% of U.S. cattle operations report net farm income below $50,000. In drought years, net income across the Northern Plains drops an average of 34%. Year 2 lease budget versus reality. Budgeted hay yield, 2.8 tons/acre. Actual hay yield, 2.1 tons/acre. Drought. Emergency expense, 40 tons purchased at $195 per ton equals $7,800 unexpected loss. You don't sleep well in August. You run numbers at the kitchen table at midnight, except now the loss is entirely yours. In October, the calves wean light at 562 pounds. Fortunately, the market is strong at $218 per hundredweight. The check from the sale barn clears at $147,000. After the lease payment, hay, vet bills, fuel, trucking, and the banker's cut, you net $38,400. You pay yourself $2,800 a month and call it even. The lease renews. You sign without hesitating. Level 5. The independent rancher. Age, 43, equity. Owner of 640 acres. The neighbor's daughter decides she doesn't want the land. He calls you on a Tuesday. The 640 acres is listed at $1,280 per acre. $819,200 total. You've been talking to the USDA Farm Service Agency for 2 years. They're beginning farmer and rancher loan program caps at $600,000 for a direct loan at 4.5% interest. Your down payment, $220,000, every dollar saved over 7 years of leasing, plus $60,000 from selling a small inherited mineral interest. The rest, carried by the bank. You sign the papers on a Wednesday morning. You drive home on a 2-lane highway, and for the first time, the land outside your window is yours. Optimizing the asset. The state grazing lease renews at $4.10 per animal unit month, AUM. You run 1,800 AUMs. That's $7,380 a year for grass you don't own. To grow, you stop buying outside cattle and add replacements from your own heifer calves. You stop buying hay and start stockpiling native grass for winter grazing. You install 3 developed water sources with NRCS cost share funding covering 50% of the cost. The ranch's carrying capacity goes up by 40 head without adding a single acre. You survive major market shocks like the massive processing disruptions that cause prices to crater. You quickly learn that the ranchers who survive long enough aren't always the best cattlemen. They're the ones who understand basis, futures, and forward contracts well enough to not get destroyed by a market they can't control. By 47, your back starts going L4, L5 disc. The surgeon says it's decades of heavy lifting and rough riding. You opt for the injection instead of surgery and you're back on the tractor in 6 weeks. You hire a part-time hand at $18 an hour for the heavy lifting. The math makes sense. It's not a hard decision. Level 6. The Cattle Baron. Age, 56. Net income, $190,000 to $240,000 per year. The operation has grown into a powerhouse. 2,400 deeded acres, 4,200 acres of state/federal lease, and a registered Angus cow herd of 380 pairs. You run a battery of 19 bulls. The ranch grosses $680,000 in a good year. In a terrible year, it drops to $80,000. You've survived 2 of those. You're a fixture in the community now. You've served on the board of the Montana Stockgrowers Association and testified on grazing lease policy. When a new outfit moves into the basin, they come to you to understand the local water rights. You don't charge them, you just tell them the truth about the creek. The value of the legacy. The land has appreciated aggressively. The 640 acres you bought for $1,280 an acre is now valued at $3,400 an acre. Deeded land value, $8.1 million on paper. A business valuation, $4.1 million. Cattle, equipment, leases, brand, and goodwill. A conservation easement on 1,800 acres of your deeded ground paid you $1.4 million and permanently reduced your estate tax exposure. The ranch stays a ranch when you're gone. That was the whole point. Your son is 24. He spent 2 years working a tough operation in the Powder River Basin after college, the same basin you worked at 21. He came home last spring and asked for a job. You put him on at $18 an hour. He didn't negotiate. He showed up the next morning at 5:30. You watched him feed before the sun was fully up. Tractor running clean, no wasted motion. You didn't say anything. You didn't have to. The full circle. The land broker calls on a Thursday with the offer for $4.1 million. You tell him you'll think about it. You won't sell, but you let the paper sit on the kitchen table for a week next to the coffee and the brand book just to look at it. Just to know it's real. The fence line where you pulled staples at 16 still runs along the east boundary of your property. You restrung it yourself years ago. Same posts, new wire. The corner post your uncle's friend set decades ago is still in the ground. You checked it last fall with a come-along, and it didn't budge. Some things you build right once, and they hold. The old rancher who first hired you died long ago. His kids sold the place to a hunting outfitter out of Texas. The cattle are gone, and the bunkhouse is just a guest cabin now. You drove past it once on the way to a meeting and didn't stop. You already knew what it looked like on the inside. This morning, your son is pulling staples out of a downed fence section on that same east boundary. You can see him from the kitchen window. He doesn't know you're watching. He works the exact same way you did at his age, head down, methodical, no wasted motion. The coffee is hot. The land outside the window runs to the horizon in every direction. All of it yours. Most of it still owed. All of it worth it.